So we'll get going. I have, do you know, I'm like 90% sure I have COVID. Like I've done. Okay, well, thanks for doing this first of all. I appreciate you taking the time out. But I felt it ticking in my throat there, and I was like, man, I've had like a head cold for about 3 weeks, and I've tested myself a good few times, and it's always like I'm looking at it, and at this stage I'm almost hoping it's positive, because it's like it will explain why my throat is sore and why my like nose is blocked and stuff. It'll just give me a reason rather than just like, is it? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I just know it's just definitive then. But every time I do it, it's negative, and then and now I'm at the stage where I'm almost feeling disappointed when it's negative. I'm like, oh, it's not COVID. It's just like.
That's so funny that's how it is nowadays. But I feel like a lot of people are in that boat, right? Of like, I just want to get it over with, like know what I had and be done.
Yeah, I think like obviously there's people in society who are like absolutely terrified at the prospect of coming near anyone that has it, and like if depending on what their situation is like. But I think I'm probably in the barrel of like, oh, like I'm probably going to get it at some stage. Like I have nothing on for the next couple of weeks. Just let it be now, and then I can just like not be looking over my shoulder or like as panicked or whatever. But yeah, because my two kids have had, my daughter's 2 and my son is like 4 or 5 months old, and they've both had the same head cold as I've had, and like I'm just like refusing to test them because I just like no. So I'm like, myself and my wife are testing ourselves, being like, well, I mean, if we have it, they have it. If we don't have it, they in all likelihood don't have it, because we have all the exact same symptoms as each other. But yeah, I'm just like, I took another test last night, and I was like, I had to stop myself being like, come on, like, come on, this time. But yeah, no, I'll make it through the episode. I'll be fine.
All right, good.
No, honestly,
if you need
I'll
to
be
tap
fine.
out,
Don't worry about
let
it.
me know.
So you're based in Las Vegas now, full time.
Yep, moved out here a year ago. A year and a couple months from a little town
from West
in
Virginia,
West
somewhere,
Virginia.
is it?
Yeah.
Is it what's the lyric of the song? West Virginia, Monty Marma? No.
Mountain Mama, take me home, country roads. Hell yeah.
Is it Mountain Mama? Is that the line?
Yep.
Holy shit. My entire life I thought that was the name of a town in West Virginia. I thought it was Monte Marma or something.
Nope.
Mountain Mama.
Mountain Mama, yep.
Oh my god.
So that's like growing up in the town that I'm from is called Morgantown. But just growing up in West Virginia, anytime you hear that song come up, you're belting it out, You're singing it after basketball games.
I'll let you in a secret. It's the fucking same thing in Ireland. If you hear that song, you're getting involved. It's like that and Wagon Wheel. They're the two. Yeah, like, oh my god, like they'll be playing in nightclubs, like like when it's like, oh shit's getting real, like that's what's going to come on. Like it's going to be like Wagon Wheel, or it's going to be like Country Roads. Like from when you're, I feel like we don't actually learn it in school, but I feel like we might as well. It's on every bus ride, like for tours, and they're too.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, there's something.
I knew I liked the Irish just a little bit differently, and I never figured out why, but that must be it. There's a connection.
Yeah, I remember Old Crow Medicine Machine, I think was the name of the band that did Rock Me Mom, like Wagon Wheel. Mm-hmm. And I think Bob Dylan wrote the song for a film or something, got like halfway through it, and then was like, fuck it, I'm not bothered, and just left it.
Yeah.
And then that Old Crow Medicine Machine took it over, made it into a song, had like big hit with it, whatever. And then there's this guy, Nathan Carter. He's like one of those like real clean cut, like country singers. Like here, I think he's from the UK, or I'm not sure. He's Irish links anyway. But he released it, and it was like, in Ireland, it just went massive, like ridiculously big. But yeah, there's a big country scene in Ireland, like country music. But not like not like singing about your ex-wife in a bar, like not that kind of country music, not like, you know, not like the stereotypical country music you think of where the title of the song is longer than the song, like not those kind of ones, but like, yeah, there's a definite, like, you know, I've been to America once, I like country music, I'm gonna release a country album.
That's great. What are, like, who can I listen to? Who would be the best representation of like Irish country music?
Who could you listen to? John, I'm going to send you some stuff afterwards. I'll send you some names.
Perfect. I'll check
let me
it
think
out.
about it, and I'll send you some names. Yeah, I'll send you some funny ones, and I'll send you some genuine suggestions of like, this is actually okay, and then I'll send you some ones of like, you'll find this funny coming from an actual place where country music is the thing. Okay, so
Perfect.
you moved. What weather? I'm assuming weather in West Virginia now is like cold and snowy and stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of. I love West Virginia. Always gonna have a lot of state pride. But the weather there is shit. It's you know, you're looking at maybe 100 to 150 days of sun a year, and the rest of it is just cloudy, mucky, like not quite Ireland weather where it's like raining all the time.
It sounds pretty similar.
But yeah, like you get a lot of days that are gloomy, overcast. Yeah, it's just not great. But coming out here, living here, and having it being, you know, I mean, the temperature is one thing. Like it does get kind of hot here, but just to have the sunlight, like on days like today, like it's 40 degrees outside, but the sun is shining bright as can be, not a cloud in the sky. It's kind of hard to beat.
And I was curious. So your surname, is that like Italian, or where is that from?
Yeah, so I believe it's Polish. My great grandfather. It was either my great grandfather or his father, so great came over from Poland, and I believe that it was a little different spelling at the end of the name. So I'm not gonna pretend like I know how to pronounce it, but that's where we trace it back to is a deep Polish or like Eastern European.
That's cool.
I guess is that cool.
Eastern? Eastern Bloc, I guess. So now I'm kind of thinking, is Eastern Bloc, is that something communist? I don't know. Anyway, because I thought originally I thought it was Italian, but then I was like, there must be an apostrophe missing then, because it would either be DE and then a space and then, or else D apostrophe. I was like, maybe it's not like, so Polish makes sense.
That's what everybody says to me too. They're always like, is there something missing? Did I spell that right? Did you spell it right? And I'm like, no, that's my last name. I had somebody try to tell me one time in school. He was like, oh no, that's not a last name. That's not a real last name. I was like, well, it's my name. I've had it my whole life. My family's had it. We've all had it. And he's like, no, that's not right. I'm like, pretty sure it's right, but okay.
Was that a teacher?
Yeah, he was like a fill-in. He was a substitute, and he was this little like peppy.
He was looking for a fight that day.
Yeah, like young adult. He was just like, "Oh, I'm better than these guys. I'm gonna tell them this isn't a name." Like, get out of here.
Yeah, my wife's name is Orla, and it's like it's like an old Irish name or whatever, and so it's been around like, you know, hundreds of years in different variations, but there's loads of different ways of spelling it. Like, so hers is like ORLA, and you put a little fada on, a little like accent on the first O, basically. Okay. But I remember we were like both 24, went back to college, we were learning like how to be teachers, and that's where we met. Like, and I vividly remember sitting in a lecture, and we had to write her name on a sign-in sheet, but it was an Irish like class, so we had to write her name in Irish on the Irish sheet. And Orla wrote her name, and her name is Irish, so the rule is like, if your name is Irish, you don't translate it into Irish because it's already in Irish, so you just write it as it is. But he was like, that's not your name. And she was like, what? And he was like, this is all in Irish. He was like, that's not your name. And she was like, no, it is, yeah. And then, no, that's not your name. And no, it is. And she was like, oh, Fada Orla, that's my name. He's like, that's not how you spell it. And she was like, oh no, I know there's other ways of spelling it, but that's how I spell like that's what's on my birth cert. He's like, but that's not the name Orla. It's not how you spell it. And he had one, there's about 5 ways you can spell it. And he had one that was correct and everything else was wrong. And it was just, I'll never forget, it was just such a bizarre experience of just like, mate, that's how she spells her fucking name. Move on. You've only got like 40 minutes left now. It's like, you know, let's hit the bricks here. You know, it's just very uncomfortable. Like, it's weird. So I like to kind of bed people in chatting a bit about coffee first, just because it follows the name of the show. So it kind of makes sense, I guess.
Of course.
Do you drink coffee first of all, and then is there a noticeable difference between the coffee scene in, say, I've already forgotten the name of the town you're from, in West Virginia, Morgantown. That's it. I was thinking Mountain Mama again.
You can call it
is there a noticeable difference from there to Vegas?
Ooh. Yes. The reason being is that I was around a lot of, like, I didn't realize it at the time, but like coffee snobs, I guess you would call it. But like 3 of the 4 people that I learned coffee from now have their own roasting company. They have their own storefront for coffee.
Shit.
Like, they went hard with it. So whenever I was trying coffees with them, you know, I was getting these like really, really good experiences with coffee. Not knowing the level of just energy and effort that they put into their coffee. So now that I'm out here, not that it's different, but it did taste really good whenever I would like have it from somebody who, you know, got the beans, roasted it themselves, and then went through the process of preparing it and just how exact and precise they are. Like, I haven't quite found anybody who does that out here yet.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a little bit more special back home.
God, imagine being that spoiled and not realizing you were that. Like, imagine going into a normal coffee shop just being like, oh, can I have whatever? And like, whoa, you're not going to roast the beans right in front of me? So like,
yeah.
Is that not what, do all coffee shops do that?
Exactly. Like, back home, they were like, oh, sit down. Like, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. Like, here, I'm going to pour it in this Chemex. I'm going to leave it for, you know, exactly 3 minutes and 22 seconds. And then I'm going to pour 300 milligrams. And I'm like, okay, make me coffee. But now, you know, you go to whatever shop and, you know, I get a cold brew or a pour over or whatever, and it comes out in like 2 minutes, and I'm just like, great, this is okay, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'll just keep your tip in my pocket.
Right.
Okay, podcast then. So you've done a few. So you were on the Clydesdale Fitness and Friends before, and you were just on Christian Harris's the Move Fast Lift Heavy as well. I was curious, like, when you're like, I've been asked to do shows before, and I say yes because it's like I'd like to support other people who are doing what I'm doing. So it's just nice. It's nice to support. If I'm asked, I'll say yes. But like, part of me is like, why me? Like, why? Surely there's someone else you can, like, do you get that? Or are you at the stage now where you're like, yep, that's part and parcel of what I'm doing?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always going to feel that, right? It's just like, I'm a kid from a small town that nobody knows of from West Virginia. And, you know, like, some of the things that I'm doing are cool, but not, I don't know if they're necessarily, you know, podcasts or noteworthy or anything like that. But then the other part of me, like the kid in me, is like, I want to do these. Like, I want people to know me. I want to talk on podcasts. I want to do this. Like, you know, it's kind of like living that athlete life that I've always like dreamt of.
Yeah.
And like you said too, it's like supporting anybody in what they do. Like, obviously, you know, you have a passion for coffee and talking to people and, you know, learning about whatever it is, just learning about different people. And that's something that I can relate to. And so whenever I see people out there that are doing it, you know, obviously some of the podcasts are, you know, reputable and well known and this and that, but like to me, like that doesn't matter, you know. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm just gonna wait until I get on the Savon podcast, or I'm just gonna like wait for Joe Rogan, you know. It's like, nah, like
Yeah.
I enjoy meeting people and learning about others just as much as, you know, hopefully they're interested in learning about me. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll keep you busy till Savannah calls anyway. So
That
I
wasn't
was
me. That
curious
wasn't me
about.
trying to say like anything about like this
No,
podcast.
I
Like I
know.
hope that wasn't
I'm
the.
no, no. I'm taking the piss out of you. It's fine. I'm
Okay.
only joking.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
No, but well, no. Like I know that you're not saying it, but I also know my place. Like I also know there's a. Like I was talking to someone about this yesterday, and I was on another show, and they were like, "Oh, you know, it's nice for this like small podcast to have like, you know, a Big Brother podcast on the show." And I was like, was she talking about my show being the big show? I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. And then she was like, asked me how I feel about it. And I was like, the analogy I used was, so you know, like ships that carry ships, you know, like a ship shipping ship.
Yeah.
So then there must also be like ship shipping ships, like a bigger ship that carries shipping ships. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, we're all in this like body of water, and there's these like shipping ships. That's like Savan's show and Talkie Elite. And then there's like small little fishing vessels like mine. And then there's like little, you know, like one man rowing boats, like other smaller ones or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're all in the same water, so it's great. So if the tide rises, we all lift, so it's great. But then I was like, what actually happens then is the camera like pans out and it zooms out and you realize it's a fucking puddle, and like the ocean is like two meters away, and that's where all the real big ones are. You know, like that. It's like, oh my God, we're dwarfed. We're so like Talking Elite are like huge, like, and then you zoom out and you're like, oh, they're actually quite small compared to Joe Rogan, or, you know, like it just, it's, yeah. So I think like one of the things that you have to make peace with early on is like, I know my place, and it's like, I'm going to do the absolute best job I can do, but I'm not in it for those reasons. Because I think it's just such a slippery slope if you start chasing numbers or chasing, you know, like, I don't know, size or only ever talking to big people, or only ever, like, that's why I like what Savan does, because he has people like, say, Taylor Self, who, like, a lot of people who follow CrossFit, when he was first on the show, were like, who? Do you know? But like, he deserves to talk as much as anyone else, and he's entertaining and interesting and stuff. And then you'll also get like Ben Bergeron on it, you know, like, I think that's a cool thing. It's a model I tried, you know, I've tried to do that myself as well, because I think it's, like you say, it's, you're kind of helping everyone.
Yeah.
So CrossFit then.
Yeah.
Moving from West Virginia to Vegas is obviously like okay, I'm taking this pretty seriously. But when, like, were you always active growing up? Like in West Virginia, is West Virginia like, is your town a sporty town? Were you a sporty family? Did you play much sport growing up?
Yeah, I got lucky that both of my parents were really active. Typically and traditionally, West Virginia is, I think, like the first or second in obesity rates. It's not a very healthy state, which is unfortunate. And, you know, thinking like long term for myself, that's something I would like to try to change as much as I could. But I was really lucky. You know, my dad growing up was always running, biking, swimming. You know, he did some weight training and stuff growing up, or that I would see, but he was very endurance and cardio based. He would do, you know, marathons, half Ironmans, things like that. So that was a really sweet, you know, role model to have. And then my mom is the one who got me into CrossFit. So whenever I was going into college, I had played sports growing up. I did basketball. I ran cross country and track. I played golf, which isn't that physical of a sport, but it's just fun. And so like I had done some like hard training before that, but it basically ended going into college. And then, yeah, went to college, realized I was like, I'm not doing anything and I need to be doing something. Like, I need to exercise. And she had been trying to get me to do CrossFit for probably 2 years at that point, just in my ear constantly about it. And then one day I kind of messaged her and I was like, hey, my squat doesn't feel right. Like, what should I do about it? And she's like, oh, there's a coach here, at my box. Like, come and you don't have to do a class. Like, just come and talk to him. So I did that. We started doing that a couple days a week. And then it turned into like, I was like, hey, I want you to train me. He would give me workouts. And then the first like CrossFit workout that I did, I remember it was like burpees and kettlebell swings. And after that, I was like, drank the Kool-Aid. I was in and did it for a couple more, like did it for probably like 2 more years, not very competitively, like just kind of doing it. And I was lucky that we had a competitive team out of our gym that went to regionals back in the day. But, I was still in school. I had, other priorities or just like other things were important to me at the time. And then they went away with regionals, and I was like, well, I still want to do this. Everybody else kind of hung up the shoes, hung up the gloves, but I was like, yeah, let's try to compete. Let's try to see if I can do one individually. So did that. Went to the MAC in 2019, which is where I actually met Christian. I was wearing his stuff, and he was like, hey, where'd you hear about this? And I was like, oh, I've been following him for a while. And he's like, oh, that's cool. That's my brand. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then, basically just didn't look back, up until a year ago when I moved out here, I was still doing it. I was still training hard, but I was also working full time. So I was working as an individual coach at a gym where I had, 30 clients on average, and I was coaching probably like 20 hours a week on the floor, early mornings, late nights, cleaning, all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like full time. It was still full time, but there were other priorities, other responsibilities. And then I moved out here, and yeah.
I was going back to your Instagram, and I saw there was one point before you moved to Vegas where you were like, oh, great trip out to Vegas. And then you were back in West Virginia. So how, like, were you in contact with some of those people, or were you being coached by Justin at the time? Why would you suddenly just go to Vegas on a whim and then like go back again?
And then move. Yeah. So I had been working with Justin for about a year at that point.
How did that begin, that relationship?
Yeah. So I was being coached by another coach that I'd known through an ex-girlfriend at the time. He suggested that I went and did this competition that was it was just a couple hours south of me. So I drove down, I did it, and that qualified me to go to London to compete in the like international functional fitness world championship.
Oh, the IFF 3 or whatever.
Yeah. So I did that, and whenever I was over in London, I didn't know anybody. Luckily my mom and grandma were there, but Justin was one of the guys that I, obviously looked up to, as he was like coaching the team, but also just in other regards. Like I was just learning about him, talking to him, chopping it up in between events. So that's where we first met each other. And then fast forward another year.
Sorry. So is that when you qualified to be, is that you qualified to be on, like, say, a Team USA? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the way that they do it is a little interesting. So the United States Functional Fitness, you go to this competition, and based on how you place, they took the top 5. So the top 3 individuals, like the podium finishers, they went on to compete individually, and then the other 2 were on like the team side of things. So it was 2 men and 2 females.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then Justin was coaching just the team, is it?
Yeah, he was kind of like coaching everybody, but like some people were just, they already had coaches, or they didn't want, all of his help. So he was there as like the Team USA coach, but he did a really good job coaching us, because there were a lot of team events, where it was like synchro or relay style or whatever. And his background is in grid league, and then his background is also
he's done everything, man. Like, he has done, if there's something in functional fitness, it like branded or not branded or branded differently, he's done it. So he's done the 3, like what you consider grid CrossFit. He's coached individual athletes, team athletes in CrossFit. He's coached teams in grid, and now he's done this as well. Like, dude, he's crazy. He has so many like Yeah, geez, that's crazy.
And
So many
he's
feathers in his
accomplished
hat.
with it too. Like he's like what? It's not like he's just been around the sport,
Yeah,
right? Like
pissing around and
yeah,
yeah.
no, he's like crushed the grid league. Like I'm pretty sure his team was either like the winningest team or something. Like he had a great team in grid league, great showing there. Um, obviously with Carey and the stable of athletes that he's got, plus the team with team dynamics back in the day, getting fourth at the games, that's amazing. And then yeah, the functional fitness stuff. It's unfortunate because it seems like it's fizzled out a little bit, like especially with the quarantine and stuff. I think that kind of was a detrimental year for
Yeah.
them. But yeah, he's so impressive, so knowledgeable, and
Yeah.
relatable. Like that's the one thing I love about him is
Yeah, that's the thing I really like about him is that he's just a guy. Like he's just, you can talk to him about anything and he'll have like I don't know what he's like as a coach, as in obviously I haven't been coached by him, so I don't know, but I assume he's very good at like either, I suppose, like knowing what someone needs and then like calming them down or ramping them up accordingly. And like he strikes me as the type that has a story for everything, and like a moral of like, well, like this. I just feel like he has so many, like a filing cabinet in his head of like, this situation requires this thing to happen, or I just feel like he'd be very good at that.
100%. And like you said, how experienced he is. I mean, if you listen to this guy's like whole life story, growing up, went to school to play golf and basketball at a Division I school, ended up getting into a musical career and like toured Europe, like was on the top charts, and just yeah, he's the experience is there. But that is the really cool thing about being out here. Like you can develop that relationship through texting and through phone calls and stuff, but like I'm over at his house, like hanging out with his kids, like we're going and getting dinner or coffee together. Like he knows everything that goes on in my life. And that would happen regardless of, regardless if I wanted to make it to the games or not. Like he's always been a role model for me. And like you said, he knows how to get me fired up. Like, it's taken a couple of years to just like, to get to know each other, but now, yeah, he knows what to say to fire me up. He knows what to say to calm me down. He just knows me. And that's the coolest thing that I could ever ask for.
Yeah, I had him on, and like when I was researching him, I was just constantly just being like, what? And like then I'd find something else out and I'd be like, what?
Yep.
And I remember Chase and Bill were having him on Get With the Programming, and I was like, oh, that's cool, he's a cool guy. And they were like, oh, anything interesting about him? And I was like, well. And I just like listed off some stuff, and they were like, are you taking the piss out of us? Like, are you setting us up to ask him a stupid question? I was like, no, genuinely, that's all true. Like, all of that stuff that I just said to you is true. Yeah, he's like crazy good story. So when you went out to visit him then, I guess, and then like the rest of them were there, obviously, and so was it a case that you went out and you were following, he was coaching you remotely, I guess, you went out, trained there, and then were you like, okay, this is next level, like this is the extra like 2% that I feel like I'm missing will happen here?
Yeah, thinking back, it's a really cool story. I booked a flight. I came out here. I slept in his living room on the floor. But it was right as Carey was prepping for stage 2 of the 2020 games. So she had just qualified as one of 5 people. She did the first stage with Bethany and Danielle. And so the 2 of them were out here. I was out here. And then there were a couple other athletes like Alexis Raptis was out here. And there's another teen girl out here. Like Ryan Elrod was out here. So just the vibe of the gym every single day, and like how hard I pushed myself then, and it was cool. Like I hit some PR, like I hit a really cool PR, which was cool to hit with my coach. And I got on the plane, and I was like kind of thinking about it. I was like kind of thinking about it as I was out here, but I was just trying to embrace the moment. And then I got on the plane, sat down, finally had like a second to just like breathe. And within the first like 2 minutes, that thought came to my head. I was like, I need to move out there. I need to be there. And here we are.
And What was your family story at home? So your parents are still at home, and like, was that hard? Was it hard? Was it a tough decision to make? As in, it's one thing sitting down and playing, being like, I need to move here, and then it's another thing being like, I'm actually doing it, and I'm leaving like the town I grew up in and stuff. Is that a difficult thing to do, or was it like?
Holy, yeah. Yeah, so I grew up and I lived with my parents a little bit through college and then moved out. So I'd only been out of the house for like 2 years, or a year and a half, something very, very light. And again, I'm extremely lucky for them because whenever you kind of pitch that idea, right? Like, hey, I'm working in a gym that's stable, it's like it puts money away for retirement, like I'm paying, like all the stuff that like it is a good setup at home, right? And then to tell them like, hey, I'm gonna move across the country, like I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do for work, but I'm gonna figure it out. And I don't know if I'm gonna make the games, but I'm gonna try to. I could definitely see how some other parents might be like, maybe you should be realistic. But I'm very lucky with two parents that are extremely supportive. My mom has been to every competition. Wadapalooza was the first one that she actually missed. I was a little upset, but she's been to all of my competitions, like Norway, Sweden, London, Miami, or not Miami, West Palm Beach, and Atlanta, and Vegas, and all that stuff. And my dad's the same way. So having their support was something that I wanted regardless, and getting it was awesome. And then I remember, so I drove across the country. It was a 32-hour drive. Drove out here, and I remember getting to this place. I pulled up. I had all my stuff in like trash bags and just in my car. I unloaded it all, and I remember looking at my room and just lost it. Just the floodgates started opening, and I was just like, holy shit, I miss my mom. Like, did I really just move across the country? Like, did I really do that? And it took me a couple days.
What age were you when you were moving?
This was only last year, so I was 23.
Yeah, like it's
So me and my dog moved across the country. Like, only knew Justin and didn't really know Carrie, didn't really know Bethany and Danielle, and since then, obviously, I have a lot of good relationships with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's crazy.
I meant to ask you about your dog. Is it an Australian sheepdog or no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It looks like one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a cool dog.
Come here, baby. Come here. Yes, this is my little. Oh wait, hold on. Yep, this is my little buddy Danner.
Oh.
Yeah, he's been
lovely.
He's been so awesome to have. Just because I don't know that I would have been as okay with all the moves.
And it's a constant, right? Like it's it's something that came with you both places. Like, so yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, he's a cool dog. I always admire him on your stories and stuff.
Yeah, he's a good little buddy to have. He drives me nuts sometimes, but like I wouldn't have been able to do it without him.
What are they like as a breed? Are they like, does he need loads of activity, or is he kind of that's the same dog? Is that the same dog Mad Max had?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, you might have to look that up. But honestly, I think I got really lucky because a lot of the common things that I've read about healers haven't been true for Dan. Like, they say that they are extremely destructive. Yeah. Literally the only thing he chews up is the little like plastic bits on the end of like shoestrings or stuff like that. Never has torn up a shoe, never has destroyed anything. He's like really, really good with other breeds of dogs. Like, he gets along well with everybody. He's a huge people person. He's like cool with cats, which like all of those things are like, no, these breeds are reactive. They don't like other people. They're scared. It's like, no, Danner's the coolest dog ever. But the really nice thing too is that he's a work dog, Like, you tell him the command, you do it a couple times, and he's like, all right, I got it. I'm on it.
I Googled it. There it is. Mad Max's dog is an Australian cattle dog. It looks exactly like him.
I love
looks
that.
like the same dog. So that's another. If you ever face into an apocalypse, a post-apocalyptic reality, you've got good company there. So you're sorted.
Kick out.
So you mentioned you talked there about like joining up with Underdogs and moving out and making the decision and like, you know, a tough arrival or whatever. Is it like you did team at regionals, didn't you, yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So then was when regionals went and people stopped or were like, oh, okay, like we've had our shot, that's fine, and you were like, oh, I'm going to keep doing it. What, like, was there a watershed moment in when you were training or when you were competing where you were like, I have the potential to be really, really good at this?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, that's a great question.
Because like it's a lot. Like it's a lot to go all in. Like it's a lot to move across the country. It's a lot to leave your familial home and to sleep on someone's floor until you get sorted, and to give up a job and to, you know, travel with your dog or whatever. Like it's a big emotional and financial and like personal investment to make.
Yeah.
So there, like I'm wondering how, like, because I know I've talked to some people and I asked them that question. They're like, I'm still waiting for that. Like I'm just kind of going, and then I feel like I haven't had that moment yet where I'm like, fuck, I could be really good at this. And I think like I always find that surprising that like I've like, surely there's been a time where you hit a lift and you were like, yep, I'm pretty good at this. But like was there something? Was it the potential that the move held that like led you to do it, or was there a moment pre-move where you were like, I could do really well, and this is something that will help me do that?
Yeah, interesting. I guess looking back on it, I've always felt that I was going to be good, you know. I do feel like one of the things that's helped me is I have a very strong work ethic, and knowing, especially in this sport where nothing is really set up for me to be successful, I would have to work really, really hard to get to that level. And so it was never like an issue of like, could I do it? It was more of like, do I want to? Like, and that sounds a little arrogant. I don't mean to say it that way. I guess the way that I want to say it is like, I've never doubted myself. I just know that like every session that I get through, I'm like, okay, I gave 100% right there. That was all I had. But I know that I could be better next time. Like I know that if I keep working hard, that like there's more potential there than what I got out of, or there's more potential than what was there today. And so that's always been what drives me, right? Is like knowing that if I keep working hard, I feel like I'm going to keep getting better. And I've showed myself that over the past year at least. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, cause like I even try to think about like my big milestones, right? Like I've hit a pretty good snatch. I've hit a pretty good clean and jerk PR. And like, even in those moments, I'm like, I could maybe still do better, you know? So
yeah,
I don't know. I think for me, it's like that constant pursuit of greatness, and that pursuit of like getting the full capabilities out of yourself. And I just don't feel like I've came anywhere close to that yet, which is cool for me.
And then,
that's
it's exciting. Like, when you train and you're in the gym and you're whatever amount of hours in the gym, is that like, are you all in like everywhere? Are you one of those who's like, no, I can't go to that, you know, like I'm reading Fraser's book and it's like literally everything shut down for like 5-6 years, like no weddings, no, you know, no was his most common response to everything.
Yeah.
Is that like, are you there? Do you think you need to go there? Do you think he's an anomaly and that other people don't need to do that to achieve? Like, I mean, if you look at Medeiros, he won the games and like he's in New York, he's, you know, like he's making hay while like, you know, filling the barn, if you know what I mean. Like, do you think that there's a place for both, or do you have to be all in?
See, that's tough because like if I say anything but yes, you're like arguing against the greatest of all time. So it's like, you're probably wrong. I think in my life, what I've found is that, I try to be like 90 to 95% all the time. You have to realize that that's hard, right? Like, and I feel like even though Frazier said like a lot of his decisions were no, or a lot of his answers were no, Justin and I have talked about this, like after, I'm sure after Matt finishes the games, like fitness wise, he kind of just does what he wants, I'm sure he like gets not comfortable, but just, is not like in the dungeon, music blaring, like just pounding his head day after day, I'm sure that there are ways that he finds enjoyment. And so I've tried to do that, right? Like know that I can be a little bit forgiving with myself. And, if I want to go to, play board games with my buddies one night and stay up till like 10 or 11, it's not the end of the world, right? Like I know that CrossFit is a short-lived shelf life. And so if I can't enjoy the other things while I'm going through it, I don't know that I would necessarily want to. But with that being said, a time like now where, fired up after Wadapalooza, have the games in my sights, like, in my sights, now it's going to be blinders on for a couple months.
Yeah, when you led up to that sentence and said, if I can't, I assumed you were going to say like have a blowout, like, night out like once a month or whatever. And I was like, play board games with my buddies and stay up till 10. I was like, well, that is subdued.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about practical. Like I've never really been into that crazy, into that like kind of lifestyle, that party and stuff. So that's
well,
what
I mean, Las Vegas is the board game capital of the world.
Yeah,
so
dude.
You're in the right place.
I know, right? Like I've been to the Strip like a handful of times since I've been out here. No late nights. So that's why like my answer is a little biased anyways, because I'm not like a part of that lifestyle. Like now, hey, partying with the Aussies after Miami, that right there, that's like that's a once in a lifetime kind of thing. Like you have to take advantage of that. But it's pretty easy because those decisions aren't really in my head.
So you mentioned you rattled off like 10 competitions there when you were talking about the different places you've been.
Mm-hmm.
Is there hello, whoever's in the background there, is there like are all of those competitions that you did, are they information, experience, like those kind of things, or are you coming towards a time in your career now where you're like, okay, maybe outside of open, quarters, semis, games, maybe I've got like one, maybe two of those a year now? Or do you still think that you have the bandwidth to be like, I could probably go to Dubai and then do this, and then like is it coming to a time now where you need to kind of laser in the focus more to just the competition window?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I would venture to say that before I was a little bit more like that, where I never got the experience to make it to a regionals, right? And that was kind of like the dream as the team thing was like, we got towards the end of the teams and I was like, okay, I think these guys are probably going to hang it up after this year. So I would like to make it to regionals next year. And then that fell through. So then I was like, okay, well, I want to do like a regionals competition. But it was always like, for me in my head, that was always it. It was like, I'm going to go do the MAC, or I'm going to go to Norway and compete. And that's going to be my season. I'm going to do this one big competition on this first half of the year. I'm going to do a big competition on the second half of the year, and that'll be that. And now I'm kind of getting to the point where I've talked to like Carrie about this. I've talked to Bethany about this and Justin, and they're like, Maddie, you need experience. Like you need to go to these places and do these competitions and like feel what it feels like. And so, after West Coast, I was kind of like, I was taking some time off. And now that I'm back at it, like, I feel like 2022 is going to be a year like full of competitions for me, whether I make it to the games or not. I hope I do, because I think that opens up doors for Rogue or, invites to Wadapalooza or invites to Dubai, like the big competitions. But regardless of if I get that or not, I'm going to be working hard this year to try to be at all of those and hopefully individually. Wadapalooza was a blast. I can't say that I'm going to go back Indy next year go to Indy next year because I had an amazing time with those boys. So if they want to run it back, we'll run it back. But now I kind of feel like, maybe until I need to be picky, and I'm 24, I can do these things. I can travel. I'm able to kind of be a little bit more resilient and just bounce back from like the jet lag and all that kind of stuff. So like maybe now's the time to start ramping those competitions up, try to make some money, try to make a name for myself. And so this year, next year are going to be big years for me.
Yeah, well, if Filthy is on and you come over to Filthy 150, you can do what you did in Justin's house. You can stay on our floor. We'll give you the spare room though, because if you're competing, it's only fair.
I don't need all that.
Okay, so Wadapalooza, like you've brought it up, and I think that's I kind of feel like, okay, so I was aware of you. I kind of knew your name because of following Justin and following what became Underdogs, and then your efforts on the rower. Was that stage 1 or was it quarterfinals or something last year? Maybe it was. Yeah, that was fucking intense. And I was like, I remember watching it being like, okay, like I need to remember who this guy is. Like I feel like he's going to be important at some stage. And then you're at West Coast Classic, and like an absolutely stacked field. Like that was a ridiculous event.
Yeah.
And then, so Khan was obviously there pre-games. He was in Vegas, and he was somehow managed to stay on the straight and narrow while in Vegas.
Yeah.
I assumed that was going to be a train wreck, but fair play to him. He held his own. So then the games happens. Obviously, you're watching everyone else compete, and like I guess, is there a mixture there of like when everyone's ramping up and Khan's on demo team and Tola's on demo team and people are competing, and obviously like we weren't to know what would happen, Bethany and Carrie at the time, but like everyone's kind of ramping up to go and stuff, and is there a mixture of like, oh, I'm really happy for you guys, and like also like lighting a fire for next year and also being pissed off?
You know what? There was a lot of emotions around it. I don't think that they were there was nothing like chippy that I felt. Like I didn't come out of it like angry or spiteful or anything like that. If anything, like I was kind of sad. I'm a very emotional person anyways. Like you'll get a lot of emotions either way from me, but especially with those ones that people don't always like to deal with. Like I was disappointed after West Coast Classic. And looking back, I've kind of identified what went wrong and how I can fix it going forward. But after West Coast, I took a couple weeks. I took like 2 weeks off. Came back, was training again, and then you see these guys that are still training really, really hard. And they have that purpose in mind, and everybody's like learning that everybody's on their own journey. It was a little tough. It was a little discouraging where I just kind of felt like that. Like I was just in like a lull. I was just in a down period. And, but I feel like that has been really helpful for me because I'm like, I don't want to ever feel that way again. Like we're going to roll from competition into training. Like you're going to train hard and, like you're going to be dialed in for the next few years. Like this is, this was like this year or last year, I guess, it was like a taste of it. And so I like tasted it, and then I kind of like stepped away and, decide like was seeing if like, oh, like, is this something that you think you could do full time? Is this something that you think that you belong in? Like kind of that conversation we had earlier. And for me, I was like, that was not a good performance. You're going to do better. You want to do better. So like, let's make that happen. Let's never feel that feeling again. And so that's where I'm at right now, is just chasing after that.
And West Coast or Wadapalooza then, so you stepped in kind of late in the day. enough, I guess. The lads were missing a teammate. Jay couldn't make it over, or just didn't want to face prison, I guess, for 2 weeks or whatever. So you step in. Is that like, does Can message saying we're doing Wadapalooza, we're fucked, we need someone? Any interest in doing it? Did he like get in touch with Justin and Justin asked you, or how did that come about?
Yep, he texted Justin about it. I think initially, I don't know.
Did you need convincing, or were you like, yeah, I'm in?
A little bit. So Justin asked me on a Friday. He was like, "Hey, is this something that like would you consider doing this?" And I was like he could tell in my answer. I was like, yeah, I would consider it, but still a little hesitant. And then he talked to me the next day about it. He talked to me on Saturday about it, and he was like, "Hey, it's looking like they're gonna need you." He was like, "I think this is a really good opportunity for you to do it, but it's your call." And then we went over Saturday night to his house, and he was like, "So are you gonna do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna do it." So they got in contact with Justin.
Why do you think you were hesitant? Why was that? Was it because it was team and not on your own, or was it because it was interrupting training, or like what was the issue?
It was like twofold. There's a competition actually happening this weekend that I was meant to be at. But just with some other stuff going on in my life right now, I need to kind of be here, especially after going to Wadapalooza too, Yeah. Like looking at Wadapalooza, I was like, okay. I was scared, right? Like I was nervous. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to hang with those boys, and that was going to be embarrassing for me to be out there. But we went there, we hung in with them. We did pretty good. And so then coming back from that, I was like, I still have a lot of things in my life that I need to straighten up. So like, let's get those things taken care of, let's not dilly dally. And so I stepped out against that to do that competition this weekend. But originally going into Wadapalooza, I had this one coming up that I was like kind of excited for, that I was training hard for. And then I had, just the nerves and the anxiety kind of going into it.
Yeah. Oh geez, I'm so happy you did it, because it was so fun to watch. Like, okay, Wadapalooza in itself is fun. The team side this year was particularly fun because as I got closer, you were like, oh shit, like, the boys are doing it, that's pretty cool. I was like, oh, the Smith brothers, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like, as it was getting closer, you were getting more and more excited. And then like it's one of the few events, I think, where it did not disappoint at all. And I'm sitting on my couch in Ireland watching like maybe 2 events a day, and then getting up the next morning and catching up on the rest. And like, like my kids are screaming, and I'm like, just 1 minute, I just want to see what happens. Like it's not an ideal viewing scenario, and it was still incredibly fun. And I think like I don't know James at all. I've never spoken to him, but I adore Can. I think he's like just a fantastic person. He's so like if you're telling me that you were like nervous and afraid and apprehensive, and if you're telling me that you're an emotional person, like there is nobody better for you to be going into a competition with than Can.
Yeah.
And James appears to be just like fucking zen, like all the time. Like I'd say he could be hit by a truck and not react. Like he's just very calm. So like to have someone who's equally as emotional and like very in touch with their emotions it's just very serendipitous that he was on your team. And then someone as calm as James who can sleep on like a runway. But like watching it was like I don't think I've ever been happier for anyone to be in a scenario where it's like it's almost like you won a competition and your prize was to be on a team with two games veterans who've been there, done it, whatever. Because it just looked so fun and so entertaining. And I was throughout the whole weekend, I was just like, I am so fucking happy for Matt, because this is like, you don't get these experiences. You could be in the sport your whole career and never get that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's just so great, especially listening to you talk about, your experience at West Coast and your like the kind of lull before the games and stuff. Like, I mean, if ever anyone deserved to have a moment of drinking out of a shoe at the end of a competition, is just like, I'm so happy for you. It's just great. Like.
Man, I appreciate that. Yeah. Those boys did a really good job of like making me feel at home too. Like, cause I was afraid that I was going to go there and meet these two guys that are legends that have a bunch of stuff going on in their life. And I was like, I got there. We basically just, we shot the shit. We got some food. We hung out that night. We went to the gym the next day. I was just kind of following them along and just like, trying to be around them as much as I could. And they made me feel very like comfortable. Like it was like we had known each other for, instead of 5 days, it was like 5 years, right? Like it's like we had hung out all the time. So it was a really, really, really cool experience.
So then after, like, he performed incredibly well. He like didn't appear to take it too seriously, but obviously took it really seriously because he performed so well. But like, it was like very fun to watch you doing it, like the shirts, and like there was just a lot. There was a lot to process in some of the events.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like when the event finishes up and you're like, on your way back to Vegas from Miami, and you see, like, one of the things that really struck me was they would not stop posting about how impressed they were with you,
mm-hmm.
how they thought the future was bright for you, how they were like, you need to watch this guy. Like, it was consistent for about 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, like, when that happens, are you like, hell yes, like, I'm getting the recognition that I feel like I deserve? Or are you like, oh Jesus, like, now I'm facing into the open and there's all this pressure because those two guys like knighted me?
No, not at all. I mean, if anything, I come into it being like I feel like physically where I was at last year and where I'm at now, there's a big I feel a big difference. So to me, it was reassuring to go in not feeling as confident in my physical abilities and my fitness, and to go in and, have a good showing and have these boys telling me like, yeah, like, Matty, you're going to make it, to wherever you want to. You're going to make it to the games. You're going to be here and here. And so to hear them tell me that, and then know that I'm going to come home and go into like a long training camp to lead up to quarterfinals and semifinals. Like that fires me up. Like that's what gets me really like out of bed in the morning. Like it gets me fired up to get through sessions, like getting everything dialed in, locked in, and just going as hard as I can. Like I'm in a good place right now, to just say the least.
That's good. So as well as competing and training and competitions and stuff, you're also coaching. So you're coaching with, you're part of Justin's coaching team at Underdogs.
Mm-hmm.
That's like recent enough, I guess, in the last like 6 months, right?
Yeah.
And you obviously you mentioned that you coached yourself like before. Is that like, are you enjoying doing that? Is it like, is it nice doing it when it's with Justin and you're kind of learning from him? Like, because you mentioned a few times that he's a bit of a role model, so I'm assuming that's an added bonus.
Yeah, it definitely is. His physical knowledge is ridiculous. Like, he knows so much about the sport, about how to get people stronger, how to get people fitter, and then, also the other intangibles of like knowing how to relate to athletes and knowing how to give them what they need in, moments of doubt or in moments of, pure confidence or whatever it is. So working alongside of him has been, just super incredible. I came from a coaching position where it was a little bit more general. I was kind of just getting people healthy and, getting them to move again or rehab after injuries, and, nobody really competitive within CrossFit. And so that's been something like I've heard other people within our little group, like Carrie has talked about how she wants to do that, and, like relay those messages that she has learned throughout her life and, throughout different people that have came in and helped her. And so I feel like I try to do that, and it's just as rewarding to do it now, right? To like coach athletes that want pretty much the same things that I want, and to help them along with things that have helped me within my journey, whether it's mental or physical or, within whatever realm. It's just been really cool to be able to share my experience with others.
Did you see at Wadapalooza, Jake Marconi was coaching Jason Hopper, who's in the same heat as him for a couple of events. Like, have you thought about if that happens, what you do if someone that you're coaching is in the same event?
Yeah, hopefully that does not happen. I mean, I'm still going to give my male athletes just as much love and support to get there. But, you know, if I did have that come up, I'd probably talk to Justin and be like, hey, look, I don't think this is the best. But, you know, like I had a master's athlete who was down there that I was able to coach, which was cool. You know, it was a learning experience just as much because I've never been competing and had to help somebody who is competing at the same time. So doing that was a little interesting, but felt like I learned from it, and I felt like I am a little bit better now because of it. But yeah, I don't know if I could coach like somebody who I'm trying to beat.
Yeah, if you feel someone catching up on you, you could just be like, you know what? I think just probably take a 4-month break from strength. I wouldn't bother training strength if I was you. just
like just leave their weakness work out completely. Be like, you're good.
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
You
yeah.
don't need to work on that.
Yeah, then you can stand over them on the competition floor.
Exactly.
And be like, I played you. Okay, so we'll what are we now? January, end of January. We're heading into the Open is coming up. It's right on the horizon. Quarters, semi-finals, games beyond that. We'll pretend we're sitting here in January 2023. Wallapalooza is just over. Dubai is over. Rogue is over. Games are over. What's a successful 2022 in the rearview mirror look like for you?
Just better mentally and physically than I am now. You know, everything, there's no losses. Everything's learning. So no matter if I make it to the games or if I don't, if I go to Rogue or Dubai or if I don't, I want to be able to come out of this year with things to build on. So yeah, I don't know that. I mean, like I do obviously have some actual tangible goals, but I don't think that those would determine success. I think that I would determine success in, you know, in my mental state whenever I come out of this, the things that I'm going to take and apply to next year's training. You know, because that's the one thing I don't know. I don't know if other people look at it this way or not. I know I do, but like I'm 24 years old. This is a great time for me to be an athlete, but this isn't the only time, right? Like you look at some of these guys like Noah or, you know, even like Brent Fikowski or Frazier, right? Like they were doing this into their 30s. Like there are people that are doing this for a while. So like if I look at that, if I could have another 8 to 10 years in the sport, that's going to be success for me. So like, yes, those other things are going to be great. But it's actually funny. That was the song that's playing whenever I first picked up, just talking about the journey, right? It's like, it's all in the journey. So as long as I have a good journey this year and I can learn something from it, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I like that. Not the song, the message. I don't know what the song was.
I'll send it to you.
So, yeah, in exchange for shit Irish country music. We'll finish with it. We'll finish with a quick fire. Actually, sorry, there was one more question that popped into my head while you were talking there. You mentioned that West Coast Classic was disappointing and that you came away from it thinking that there's things that you need to work on, and like there was an element of frustration in your voice and you're saying that. So are the things that you felt after West Coast Classic purely physical? Are they mental, a mix of the two? Or is it like Bethany and those were saying about like you need experience?
A little bit of both. As far as needing experience and then mental, I still think like looking back, physically there was no reason that I shouldn't have been able to be within that top 5. I felt like I had everything was peaked. I felt really good on everything. But if you go back and watch my weekend, I missed a couple of snatches at 225, which like leading up to that, I had felt really confident in that. You know, that's a weight that's pretty easy for me. But it was pretty like indicative of the rest of the weekend, right? Where like the way that I responded to those snatches was not the way that I needed to. I responded by getting scared, by approaching the bar with fear instead of confidence. And just, I was mentally rattled. I wasn't focused anymore. I was more or less lost in my head. And the way that I felt, this is like kind of, I don't know that it's embarrassing, but I'm just going to put it out there. It was like I was like wanting the weekend to be over. Like I was wanting to hide, because maybe I wasn't realistic with myself and understanding that there could be negatives to it, but I was coming into the weekend like every event I'm going to crush. And I still do that with all the things that I go through. But yeah, it was a big mental battle, and it was like that saying goes, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so that was it for me, right? Like I got punched in the face on that first workout, and I did not respond well. So needless to say, that's something we've been working on the past year, and it's not going to be an issue anymore. So, or if it is, we'll learn from it.
That's good. Okay, well, look, I promise you a quick fire, so we'll finish with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so snatch or clean?
Snatch. Just something about
it. Bar or rings?
Rings, for sure.
Ski or row?
You know the
answer. Bike or run?
Bike. I fucking hate running.
Thrusters or burpees?
Oh God, neither. I like burpees. I actually don't mind burpees. Thrusters, they will never be my friend, but burpees aren't bad.
They're both awful, but like at least when it's burpees, it's like there's no external weight, or there's no, it's not, you don't have to pick up a bar. You literally just have to flop onto the ground and cry. Like, it's not,
exactly.
It's not as bad. And then James or Can? No, I'm only joking. I won't make you answer that.
Gotta watch what I say there.
Look, thanks again. Like, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it. It's like, it's funny. There's a few times where I've reached out to someone to come on, not being sure of what, like having maybe a vague idea of what I think they're going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you're one of those where it's like the furthest possible thing from being disappointed having spoken to someone like you. I feel like you've hit every best case scenario expectation I had in my head for having a conversation with you. Like, I think you're incredibly insightful, you're considered, you're like, it's no wonder that you're hanging out with people like Can, like, who just know themselves. I think I think for 24, you've a remarkable head on your shoulders, and I'm really excited to see what you can do this year and beyond. And you've a definite firm fan here.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. That kind of stuff means a lot to me. So thank you for sharing that. Actually, if you do have a minute, I have a really cool story about Colin.
Oh yeah.
So I met him in Sweden. I think we went out that night, or maybe he disappeared. I can't really remember, but
probably both.
Probably a little bit of both. So I we followed each other on Instagram, like had some DM exchanges and stuff like that. But I knew that he knew Justin. So actually, there was one night, probably like, I had already like made the decision that I was going to move to Las Vegas, but I was like, it was one of those days where I was starting to have some doubts, like, oh, is that really what I want to do? And I remember syncing up with Colin. It was like 11 p.m. at night in our time, and he was like just starting his morning, or maybe it was midday or something like that. But we spoke on the phone for probably 30 or 40 minutes, and he just did a really good job of reaffirming me and, telling me that my concerns were valid, but that he thought it was a really good opportunity, for me. And just that kind of connection that we had there was really, really cool. And looking back on it, like, I didn't know if he would remember it or not, but he brought it up down in Miami. And so, just to see everything kind of come full circle, right? Like the fact that I probably wouldn't have been in Miami if I said no to going to Las Vegas. And,
yeah,
the thought of saying no was in my head, and the fact that he was somebody who's telling me that it's a really good opportunity and pushing me to do it.